Hello everyone and welcome back to positionspecific.com and welcome to week number 2 of the Manager Premier League journey. My name's Simon, one of the coaches here at Position Specific. I've got Mikey with me again today.
Hello everyone.
So really good response, guys. Thank you very much for your comments and your messages about last week's video. Glad to see you're enjoying it. And like I said, if you guys have missed what we're doing and you just joined us on this video for the first time, then there's an introduction video and obviously week number 1. Which you need to go back and watch if you want to know what we're doing, because we want to kind of crack on into the good stuff this week rather than going over the intro again. So yeah, Crystal Palace this week away. Really interesting game against West Brom last week. It was an interesting one in terms of how both teams played, how both teams set up. Good result for Crystal Palace. Scored quite early in the second half and then sat back and counter-attacked for the rest of the game. So interesting one, wasn't it, Mikey?
Yeah, if I'm honest, mate, I could have turned it off.
I was going to say, to be honest, if it was in my back garden, I'd close the curtains.
Yeah, it wasn't the best game. No, do you know what? That's a bit sort of harsh on the teams. You know, they both had a game plan. There was a little bit of pressure on the game as well, obviously fighting that relegation battle out. But it's not my sort of style of way of playing, so maybe that's why I didn't enjoy it as much. But we had to watch it for the video, and it sort of helps us to put a plan together on what we would do against them.
So, guys, looking at the opposition analysis for Crystal Palace, very straightforward starting team for Palace, 4-4-2, really solid in terms of goalkeeper and back four. Good dynamics in midfield. Interesting dynamics in midfield actually, because obviously Ayew who plays on the right hand side of midfield is actually usually he's an out and out centre forward. To see him playing in that position was interesting, as well as Eze on the other side. I think it's one of the only times this season, or I think there's very few times this season where Eze and Zahara started in the same team, which was interesting to see. And again, Eze is another central-minded player. So when we get onto the in-possession stuff that Crystal Palace did, it's interesting to see what Palace did with those two and the two up front. And again, good balance in midfield of a holding player and one that's likely to push on as more of a number 8. Very little changes in the game in terms of substitutions. Bit of a like-for-like substitution in left midfield for Eze on 74 minutes, and then the second substitution again another like for like really, or where Ayew came off and Townsend came on the right hand side to obviously cut in and use that left foot. So yeah, no real changes in shape when they made the substitutions. And as we get further on in the video, we'll delve into exactly what they did in and out of possession.
Yeah, I think just one thing on this side is when I actually saw the starting 11, I was trying to keep an eye out on to see if they would shift to a 4-3-3, when looking at the balance, which is something that they could have gone to, but they didn't really go into that system even when they made the changes. But I think when we go through what they did in possession, it'll sort of make sense of why they had them two playing wide.
Okay, so on the basis of what Crystal Palace were doing in terms of their 4-4-2, we decided to set up in a 3-4-3. We kept Kasper Schmeichel in goal. Mikey's had another chat with Hugo Lloris, and he was really unhappy this week, but Mikey sold it to him again, so hopefully we'll keep him chilled for another week.
Yeah, I've just given him a pair of eyesight, so he's all right.
Yeah, Mikey's promised him his win bonus as well if we get another win as well, so he was happy with that. But no, we decided to go with a back 3 this week just because of Crystal Palace playing the 2 up front. We wanted to make sure that we had a +1 on our defensive line, so we've brought Eric Dyer in alongside Conor Cody and Ruben Diaz to form a back 3. We've used our full-backs as wing-backs in this scenario, which is we're both really capable of doing. Obviously, Enda Stevens plays as a left wing-back anyway for Sheffield United, and Aaron Wan-Bissaka being really athletic is obviously more than capable of playing right wing-back as well. We thought as well, and as you see as we go on, that there would be 2 good matchups for Ayew on the right hand side and Eze on the left hand side. So we've gone with two pivot players in midfield of N'Golo Kante and Ilkay Gundogan, and then we've got obviously a 3 up front against their back 4. So we're a -1 up front, but we wanted to change to a 3 at the back just to make sure that we've got that +1 on the defensive line.
The thing that I wanted to say on this side is I know you've mentioned about the 2 wing backs being able to be adaptable to adjust on what Crystal Palace are going to offer. Then the other one here is Eric Dyer. So if let's say Crystal Palace was going to go to a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1, we can move Dyer into that holding role. So just to give you an example, if Zaha goes and plays the 10, Eric Dyer can go play the holding role for us, which then means we can just move to a back four with one simple change. So that was something else that we took into consideration and what we were looking for in Crystal Palace and why we actually put Eric Dyer in the team. So when you're just looking at this now, this is just to give you a clear idea of the numbers on the pitch. So you've got your 3v2 plus your keeper. You've got your 1v1 duels in the wide areas, your 2v2 in midfield, and then your -1. So anybody who's been watching the journey or watching the video last week, this is something that we go off, always a +1, equal numbers as you go up the pitch, and then a -1 as we get higher up the pitch.
I think one of the good things about obviously this 3-4-3 shape in possession is it just gives you really good flexibility. I think Mike has already mentioned about like if Crystal Palace do go to a 4-2-3-1, then Eric Dyer can slide into a midfield position. We can become a 4-3-3 effectively. And I think, like I said, like obviously it allows your two in midfield that they can either be a double pivot together or there could be a bit of a one-on-one, which we'll get into later on in the video. If you wanted to push one of your wing backs on and keep one in, you could do, and then you're straight into a back four again, especially with the balance that we've got in the two wing backs. And also, it obviously allows your front three to be quite narrow and in the half spaces in between their full backs and centre halves, which can be a little bit of a problem in terms of communication for a back four, in terms of picking those players up as well. I think it also offers you opportunities to create overloads in midfield, whether that be a diamond or a box. With either your two forward players dropping a little bit deeper and creating it, or with the opportunity of you sliding to one side and one of your wing backs coming on the inside as well. Similar to a little bit what Man City do, but it just gives you plenty of options, and obviously, like we've mentioned before, it gives you that security behind the ball as well.
So what we're going to look at, like we did last week, we're going to look at the opposition's defensive organisation, and we've just picked the high press again here. So actually, if anybody did watch the game, Crystal Palace, especially in the attacking half, they did actually try to put pressure on West Brom and cause them a lot of problems and try to win it higher up the pitch. Now, obviously, when you're building with two forwards, it's really important that you get your distances right. But the one thing that I did notice when watching the game, the distance between the midfield and the two forwards was quite big. So if you look at the image to the right-hand side, you can see the two applying pressure, but then you've got the defensive midfielder, which is free. So this was something that we felt that we could exploit, but we'll go through that when we start to look at our tactics. But this is definitely something that Crystal Palace was going after, to press high when in the attacking half, win the ball, and then break with four. Again, that's just another image. So they have squeezed on a little bit, and you can see that the midfielder has jump pressed onto the midfield line. But I think that's because West Brom went to a 2 and a 1 in midfield. But you've still got that defensive midfielder free when in that build-up phase. Just looking at the second part of them in the defensive organisation is the low block. So when they went into the low block, one of the forwards, of Benteke or Zaha, would drop in and then start to screen the defensive midfielder, which you can see in the image to the right-hand side. They then become really compact and really hard to break down and become really narrow. Now, I know it shows up there that the left midfielder is quite wide, but if you watch through the game, it started to become more narrow. So what we're saying here is once we've got Crystal Palace into a low block, then we've got to start looking at opportunities of how we switch the play quickly and get our players in 1v1 duels or 2v1 duels. So we know once we get them into a low block that we can start to recycle the ball through the centre-backs or the defensive line. And they're just a couple of things that I saw on the defensive organisation. So when the ball's high up the pitch, they'll look to press. Once they do break the press or it goes into their own half, then they drop into a low block. There wasn't really caught in between, so I don't know what you thought.
No, yeah. To be honest, like it's interesting because like their kind of defensive organisation strategy was like similar to um, in terms of the phase of it in their attacking organisation is where they tried something early and tried something like but weren't very, I won't say very consistent with it, but like they didn't try it for longer than 10, 15 minutes until they dropped into a low block. So and it was similar on their attacking organisation as well. So it was interesting because I wouldn't even say that West Brom were successful in taking out the press, but they just seemed to drop and after about 15, 20 minutes, and that was it.
So what we're going to talk about now is how we're going to build and what our plan's going to look like from the week. So if you start to look at our team now, where you've got the three centre backs, you've got the midfield four, and then you've got your attacking three. So the first thing what we'd do is we'd keep Cody in a central position. And he's actually not a bad ball player. And I think when you've got the 4v2, I think, it should be easy for players like Cody, who's used to playing in a three, to play in between the two forwards. So all we'd say to Cody is can you occupy both forwards and stay in between? Then you're looking at the other two centre halves to try work the outside spaces of the two forwards. Midfield, push on, and then front three, try to pin their back line. So just to give you a picture here of something that we'd look at is can we shift the ball one side and then come out the other side? And because there was only pressing with one, you could do this in two passes. So just to show you, if the keeper plays to the centre-back, that's pass one. And if the centre-back takes a touch and then passes it across, that's pass two. Now, because Crystal Palace have been, you could see that they've been in training and trying to fill the two or three nearest channels to the ball. What you're going to do is you're going to make Crystal Palace shift across the pitch before you switch the play, which means that they're going to do a lot of running. Now, if you do this every time that you're building and you start to work out the kilometres that they're running, the high intensity runs, at some point they're going to get tired or they're going to switch off, which then gives us an opportunity to get out. But some of the things that we started to think was shift the ball one way, exploit the other side, and then fix the space instantly, which you can see there. Now, this could go into Dyer and work the other way, or it goes to Diaz and work the other way. Now, what we're looking at is can they break the line of the second forward and then start to create that 3v1 against the wide forward, especially if Richarlison keeps their right back pinned in. So anything on that? Is that clear?
Yeah, definitely. No, like like as I said, like getting him to shift across the pitch like constantly is like it is tough. It's tough work on the defensive team. So there's always going to be someone who's kind of like not quite at it or not quite there, and that'll give you the opportunities to play through. But creating those 2v1s down the side in a bit of so like obviously in this scenario here, it'll be the centre half and the wing back creating that 2v1, and then once you pass that one, can the wing back and the forward create another 2v1 down the side as well? So yes, ball speed's really important, especially like the centre halves being able to drive and fix the player in front of them as well.
Yeah. And I think like just from experience from us as well, and if we did this maybe once or twice, the strikers or the manager would get frustrated. So what you'll find is like, let's say in this sample, Benteke presses the first man. If we start to switch the player in the second pass, they'll start to flatten out. And it's just from a bit of experience that side, innit? So they start to get frustrated because they're getting sick of sliding. So once they start to flatten out, that then gives us the opportunity to play into Cody to take them both out. Now, if they stay disciplined and they go 1-on-1, then brilliant, because they're just going to keep working all day and we just keep moving the ball from side to side. And if we move it quicker than they can move, then there's always going to be space at some point. One of the other things that they could do is they could get Benteke to press from the inside and try to lock us in. Now, this is where we can start to work with our midfield. So what we're saying is the nearest midfield on the second line can then drop in and get on the ball. So Diaz on this example here could just play into Gundogan, and if he's not under pressure, he can then just get on the turn and control the game. Now, if you look back in one of the slides before, when West Brom went to a 2 and a 1 in midfield, they stepped on the midfielder. So what we're saying is that's fine, you can do that. So Diaz can fix the space a little bit, and then we're looking for our forwards. So if you're looking at Lingard here, we're looking for him to maybe roll into the space behind. And I think Si mentioned it earlier, where we start to create a little box, and then we're looking from that penetration along the back line from our wing back. Okay, so these are the little pictures that we're looking at. So we would work on this what-if scenario. And again, that'd be something, that the manager would probably try get Benteke to do to try lock us in one side. But this is just a solution. So if their left back steps in with Lingard, we just go long. If he holds, then what we're looking to do is just play it into the second line and third lines. One of the other things that we'd probably work on is just getting Mo Salah to drop into the space behind their midfield, because out of a back four, so if we're talking 2 full-backs and 2 centre-backs, the ones that are the most reluctant to step out is the centre-backs. So what we're saying is we might vary it and get Mo Salah to go and drop into the pocket to see if they come out. All right, so hopefully that all makes sense, but this is just a couple of pictures that we'd work on against that press. Anything on that?
Yeah, just a quick one. Again, like we always mention, guys, like, it's about manipulating your direct opponents. And obviously, like, if this was a scenario where we're working with these players, these are highly intelligent players, like top footballers, and they'll be. You expect them to be able to ask these questions without too much input from us on the sideline. But as I said, it's seeing where the spaces is to exploit, and can you get someone on the ball facing forwards in between the lines in that space. And if you can't, if people come with them, then can you miss that line out and go to the next one? So as I said, just manipulating who you're playing against.
Yeah, and I think this isn't just something that we'd just ask the players to do. This is something that we'd highlight on the Monday. So when we look at the schedule moving forward, this would be something that would show the players on where we think we could hurt the opposition. And then we'd go and work on it. And later on in the video, we've got a little session that would work on to help us understand this, and just to see if the players understand it and can execute it to the level that we want it to be. So just sliding across, we'd have the same system with the 3v2, Cody operating in between. But all we'd do is just change the midfield dynamics and go to a 1-on-1. And I don't want to go into too much detail in this, because what I want to do is sort of like pose a question to you who are watching this. And I always say it, there's no right or wrong answer, but it'd be good to get your feedback on why we would go to a 1-on-1 and how it would affect their midfield line. So again, Si, I don't want to share too much about this. I want to ask the audience of what they think of why we would do this and what problems this would cause them. And if you think that it wouldn't work, then also just drop a comment in there. Or if you see that any performance problems could come from this. But this is definitely something that we would go after by just changing the dynamics in midfield to a 1-on-1. So I'm going to leave this up to the audience, Si, and see if they can drop some comments in the round of why we'd do this and what the pros and cons are from it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's like, it's about, for us guys, it's about, connecting with you and getting your thoughts. And like, we don't know everything. So you might see something completely different to us, because everyone sees things in a different way. So it'd be good to know your thoughts around this.
Yeah, good.
Okay, guys. So looking at Crystal Palace's attacking organisation and what they kind of did to create attacks, it was actually really interesting, because what they tended to do was, like, obviously, like we mentioned before, like they really do squeeze vertically across the pitch. And they're, for example, their right-sided player will, if the ball's on the left-hand side, their right-sided winger, who was Jordan Ayew in this particular case, would come right across the pitch, almost halfway across the pitch. But when they won the ball back, they would kind of keep that sort of like box shape in midfield, or even to a point of where they were like a 4-2-2-2, which is like, it's actually relatively unheard of. But as I said, because maybe because Eze and Ayew are very central-minded players, that's maybe why they were going to operate in those spaces on the inside rather than the outside. They didn't always like stay on the inside, obviously, like, and I'll get into a little bit of what they did in the rotation, but mainly their width would come from their 2 fullbacks, which you can see in this picture here, where they've got, obviously in the first top picture on the right hand side, they've got their right back fairly wide, not quite touchline wide, but it's fairly wide. They've got the 2 central midfielders kind of on the deepest line. They've got obviously Eze and Ayew just in that kind of 2 positions in front, and then obviously they've got their Benteke and Zaha up front. So. And it was interesting to watch them do this, because like Benteke would usually stay more as a central figure or a central forward or a number 9, and then the other 3 would like do a little bit of rotation as well. And if they did go wide, the fullback wouldn't necessarily come on the inside; they'd just play a supporting role and kind of leave them to do it, which was it can be a little bit difficult to deal with this, because it was like, it felt at times, again watching the game, it was a little bit off the cuff, and it was a kind of like, right, we've got the ball, off you boys, go and play. So I think you'll find it'll be quite interesting how we decided to deal with it. But yeah, the use, as I said, the go-to either a box in midfield or a diamond in midfield, which we're about to show you on the next slide.
Yeah, I think just on that one there, so I think we were talking about whether we were unsure whether it was specific movements that the coaching team were going after or whether it was natural movements. And again, it's just our theory, but when looking at the personnel, we think it was more natural, don't we? Because when we're looking at the passing lines, like there's a lot of like vertical passing lines and not diagonal. So this is why I didn't think it was effective, because if you're looking at the two centre backs there, then the two older midfielders, and then the two midfielders coming in, and then the two forwards. That's why I just don't think there was effective as what there should have been. I don't know if you agree with Isai, but that's why I think it was more around the natural movements of them just drifting in between. And I agree that it can be awkward out of possession when people are doing this, but I just thought they killed themselves a little bit on the angles. I think one thing for me is like, you've got to make sure that one forward comes wide, or you've got to make sure that you drop to three on the back, and it just changes up the angles of the passes to break them lines. Now, hopefully that makes sense to people. And if it doesn't, just leave your comments below, and I'll try to do a little video just to show you what I mean by that. But if you can see there's a lot of bodies just working vertically and not working off an angle. And that sort of made us sort of think there around why it was natural movements rather than specific movements from the coaching team.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the other thing as well I was going to say is like that they, again, like a sort of like at the start of the game, they were looking to, goalkeeper would roll it out to the centre halves, and they'd build by playing to fullback, playing back, but then usually it'd be a direct pass after that. And then it got to the point where they were just it was a direct pass from the goalkeeper. So yeah, I'm not too sure whether it was to overload midfield areas or central areas and get like a lot of numbers in those areas, or whether it was just kind of like, not like Mike said, natural movements, and obviously a quick kind of break thing off, or quick break scenario off their defensive shape as well. So yeah, it was an interesting one, but it didn't cause West Brom the type of problems that another team with better players might have done.
No, and I think if you look back to the game as well, mate, I think West Brom had so many more entries into 18-yard box, and I think it was due to this balance. Especially if I watched the game back, I reckon I would see a lot of attacking play from the defensive transition. So Crystal Palace getting done in defensive transition quite a bit. I might be wrong, but I'd have to watch the game back. But I don't know if I can put myself through it again, mate.
I think it's one of them as well. Like we mentioned before, that usually if we were prepping properly against the team, we'd watch 2 or 3 of their previous games, maybe even up to 5. But obviously, we just watched one in this one. So it'd be interesting to see if they did this in other games, or in other games going forward from now as well.
Listen, I do apologise if anybody does support West Brom and Crystal Palace out there, and I'm just giving you a bit of banter, but it wasn't the best game.
So yeah, just a little variation that we noticed that they did. Again, I think it's like, again, more to do with natural movements more than anything else. But there was a couple of times where they would be in a little bit of a diamond. But again, like, Eze's, I think he's more of a number 10. So sometimes if he slid central, I think it was more to do with Ayew kind of recognising that and like maybe dropping a little bit deeper and just naturally creating that diamond. And like you can see in the photo on the right hand side here, like where one of the midfielders is just about to play a long pass towards Zaha, and they've got that a little bit of that diamond shape. And again, I think it'd be interesting to ask the coaching staff whether if this was planned to get that amount of bodies in central areas compared to West Brom's 3, and to obviously get the 2 up front up against their centre halves, but they didn't really exploit it as much as you'd think, because a lot of the time they'd be missing the 4 in midfield out and going straight into Benteke and trying to win the seconds, or Zaha off that as well. So yeah, really interesting one. So and obviously I think you'll find it interesting how we decided to deal with it, because one thing that they did have was, in terms of people like Esse and Zaha and Ayew, is that they were very 1v1 specialists, like quite good in tight areas, and obviously, like especially with Eze and Zaha, very good at picking the ball up and dropping his shoulder and running with it and exploiting space that way. So yeah, it was an interesting one to try and deal with.
Yeah, I think just on that, I think they would have hurt West Brom a bit more if they'd have probably worked in the diamond. Don't know what you think, Si, but when I'm talking about angle passes, you'd have had a little bit more width in that central area to really exploit their midfield three, and then I think the angle passes would have took out what West Brom was offering rather than the vertical passes. So, even just if you look at the shape there, I know they haven't got quite the angles that are right, but you've got the two players who are fixed on the ball, and then you've got the left midfielder who's come in. And I know that's a vertical pass, but you've got vertical and angle passes there, which then can open up the space. So whenever anybody plays rondo and you play the ball to the left or the right, you're setting up that press to play through, aren't you? And I think they would have had a little bit more success if they'd just stuck with this. But again, that's just us just assuming and guessing. We could be totally wrong. And who are we to tell two Premier League managers that they're not doing something? But it'd be really interesting to speak to them and see if they did set up this or whether it was natural movements.
Yeah, because I think the other thing as well is like I think that there was a period where Crystal Palace were a box when West Brom were a 2-1, which would have made more sense to be a diamond in that scenario. And it's a little, like even in this scenario here is like that they're in a diamond and West Brom are a 1 and a 2, which would have made more sense to be in a bit of a box. But like I said, that'd be one to ask their coaching staff and see if it was planned or natural. Okay, guys. So obviously, what we decided to do in terms of how to deal with this slightly unusual shape that they tend to go to was that. And again, this is one of the reasons why we decided to play a 3-4-3 was that we obviously have that +1 on the defensive line, but we decided just because of like watching the game and seeing that Crystal Palace like didn't kind of keep the ball and build to get people in spaces in this. It was a little bit more off the cuff. We just thought that if we decided to, if we were going to match them up across the midfield, then we'd have good success of getting tight to people and winning the ball back, and then we could break from there. So what our information would be that like our three on a defensive line deal with their front two. So two go tight, one's always spare. So if that means that Zaha drops into that central space there, then in this scenario here, Eric Dyer would go with him and we'd just narrow off a little bit and keep it tight. Same on the other side if Benteke decided to drop into a central area, or we get the three to communicate, and Cody might drop in with him, and obviously Ruben Dias would then narrow off as well. We talked about the two wing backs going in tight man for man into midfield. And then everyone else is man to man all over the pitch, apart from obviously Salah, who will be a 1v2 with the two centre halves. But like I said before, like they weren't really building through the centre half, so it was more of if we got tight to the midfield, then it'd be easier to deal with. And we thought that we would be comfortable winning the ball back in these scenarios. Like I said before, the only thing with man to man is when you get quality players, and especially when you get quality 1-to-1 players. Or 1v1 players like Eze and Zaha, your 1v1 defending's got to be really spot on. And you've got to be really, not too tight, but you've got to be in a position where you can kind of put pressure on, get first contact, but you're not going to get spun and beaten that way as well. But what we'll do is we'll get into a couple of the drills where we'll show you, obviously in this scenario dealing with a box, but we'll show you in terms of some of the change in the mark scenarios that you might come across in these in this defensive organisation. And again, same thing with the diamond. Obviously it's very similar to the box. Obviously, it's just a slight little change, but similar to the diamond. The two wing backs will be on the inside again, marking the two wide sides of the two left and right side of the diamond, and then obviously like we'd go 1 and a 1 in midfield, which Mikey's talked about in possession already anyway, just to deal with their base of the diamond and the top of the diamond, and again plus 1 on the defensive line, and again get tight, make sure that they can't turn, they're playing backwards and sideways, especially can't turn and or have space to turn and drive at players, but again just being really aware of that 1v1 outplaying skills of a couple of their individuals.
Yeah, I think something to sort of make clear on this one as well. And again, if anybody's been watching the journey, this is a really difficult shape to deal with. And if you're going to go from a 4-3-3 into, let's say, a 3-diamond-3, now you can do that from your fullbacks, but the transition, I mean, we've done it side before, haven't we? And it's really, really difficult. So the only reason that we're saying man for man on the diamond here with the wing backs is because we felt it was a natural movement, didn't we?
Yeah.
And what we felt is it wouldn't spend a lot of time in there, you know, especially out of possession. It would just be the odd occasion through the game to deal with it. Now, if they was playing in a diamond for majority of the game, then we would probably start to look at maybe midfielders who could play in midfield, but also maybe do a job at fullback. Hopefully that makes sense, because what you don't want is you don't want our left back spending maybe 40% of his time in a midfield area when he's not familiar with it. So, but what we're saying is because we felt that this was natural movements, he'd only maybe spend maybe 5%, 10% of his time in there. And if it was flipped and they were playing a diamond, then that's something we'd have to make a change and maybe put a midfielder in there. So we might play an example. We might play Eric Dyer left back, knowing that he's not going to spend much time there because he's going to drift into midfield. So this was just something that we'd take a bit of a gamble on. And again, we wouldn't know until we played the game. But just looking at percentages and stats and how long they've probably spent their time in there would be quite comfortable with this, and hopefully the two wing backs will be able to deal with this as well.
Yeah, I think one more important thing that's mentioned there as well is, like, when you are going to a bit of a man-to-man system, like, it's important that the players don't move too far away from the principles of the game, because what you're saying is like that is your mark and that is your responsibility to go and get tight if he gets on it. But if he's not on it, can you be in a position where you might be able to affect someone else on the ball, or you might be able to intercept or block a pass? Plus, as well, you're also then in a good position to possibly change the mark if someone else gets beat as well. So it's not literally stand next to your man and mark him. It's literally like, don't move away from the principles of the game, where you know where your mark is and you can get to your mark, but you're also in a good position to defend for the rest of the team.
Yeah, great point, mate. 'Cause I think it's really, really important that you don't move away from the principles of the game, because they are the game and they'll never change. And, you know, like, we've seen managers and we follow managers and work with managers where they're the man-to-man system, and you end up with players all over the pitch and not actually defending the goal. So don't move away from defending central areas. And again, just to give you an example, if you can imagine this, and I wish I could show you on a tactics board, is if you're a left back and the ball's on the opposite side of the pitch, find your mark, who's the winger, but be inside the pitch. So still be compact, but know where he's at. I think that's probably the best example I can give, Si. And listen, these are just experiences that we've been through, aren't we? You know, when we've done it and been punished. So we're just trying to give you bits of advice on some of the problems that we've been through. Yeah. So just looking at the weekly schedule then, I think anybody who saw last week will have a feel of what this looks like. So green to us is a light day. Yellow is now starting to up the workload and the distances. And then you've got like the pink/red. This was size colours, not mine, by the way. But these are what we call like the days where you're going to be working to full intensity, like to the game. So obviously the Saturday is the game, and then Wednesday is trying to replicate that. So Monday morning, we'd start to look at a coach's meeting. If it was me and Si, we'd probably touch base on a Sunday and start to think about the sessions, and then we'll pull them out of our library. We'd meet with the medical team, the S&C team, and then like have a look at how the gym program would work. So if you're just looking here, Monday's usually sort of an in-possession day. We're going to touch on some connection work, which is more around principles of play moving forward, not really going to affect the Saturday's game plan too much. Then we're going to go after something that's going to help us out against a 4-4-2, more around the building. And you'll hear us talking about building a lot, because that's what we want to do. We want to get control of the game. And this can help us playing from the keeper or a little bit higher up the pitch. When it says squad recovery or player time, that's just their time to go and do things with the family, relax at home, or go and be with the players, whatever they want to do, but that's their time. We're then going to look at Tuesday around some stuff around changing the mark, SSG man-to-man, so I'll speak through that in relation to the game plan, and again, just a bit of downtime. Wednesday, we're going to try to play 11v11 closest to the Saturday that we can, so for us, what we'd do is we'd maybe bring in the 23s or reserve team, 18s. We'd get them to play how Crystal Palace would play, and then we'd see what the players would take from the Monday and Tuesday. So more around guided discovery. So out you go and play and see what they've took from Monday, Tuesday, and then start to tweak what we need to tweak to help the players out. You know, we talk a lot about the teacup theory, you know, trying to get players to think correctly under pressure. And I think that's the main thing. So we can be a little bit more command on the Monday, Tuesday, but then can they replicate that in the game without us helping them? Because at the end of the day, you know, once they cross that white line, it's up to the players. But have we give them the right information / tools to help them get across that line and win the game? Thursday is more position specific work. This will be sort of would assess how Wednesday has gone, and then we might change this. But for the plan, we've got some circuit work again, which Si will go through in and out of possession. And then they've got the squad recovery into the Friday, and we say coaches meeting. That's just a reflection meeting, right? How's the week gone in all departments? Which players are looking good? What's the team looking like? And then we'd start to speak to individuals about roles and responsibilities, or whether that's if they're not playing, we have a chat with them. We'll have the team meeting. Then we'll look at the set plays, and then obviously with us playing away, then we'll travel down to Crystal Palace, and then obviously we play the game Saturday. And then we travel back and then have Sunday off, especially when we're traveling away and if we haven't got a midweek game. So looking at attacking organisation, directional possession game. So anybody who's been following us now for a while will understand what all this is. I don't want to go through it all again, but you've got your physical outcomes down the side here. So like pitch sizes, match day +2, so how many days it is on recovery, how long we're going to work for. You've got the practice detail in here, and then you've got the individual outcomes. So this is what we call our performance wheels, whether it's an individual or whether it's a group. So this is probably the one session throughout the week, I would say, Si, which isn't in relation to the game plan. Would you agree?
Yeah, but I was going to mention before actually in the schedule that like you know when you're playing kind of like 4-3-3 obviously last week and then 3-4-3 this week, there's not too much difference in the shapes, but like we'll get into that a little bit later on. But so you can kind of plan for the future in terms of like when you are moving between two similar shapes like this very easily.
Yeah, and I think the key thing is as well is our message isn't two different messages. It's clear messages that we're going to use at some point, aren't we? So, and it's also getting players like thinking about the game and thinking about what's going to help them in their career and help us as a team as well. So, just looking at the session here, we've got 3 zones. So we've got the first zone where the keeper is. We've got the second zone, which is split into 2. So we might run some mats down here. And then we've got the third zone. Okay. So the white's objective is to get the ball from this goal and scoring that goal. Really, really simple. Now, these players are locked in here on a 3v1. They're locked in there. So the whites are all about supplying. And the red's all about pressing and trying to win and score. Okay. Now, what we've got here is when we're talking about connection, we're working with a fullback, a midfielder, and a wide forward. And some of this stuff would sort of tie in with some of our game plan for the weekend, but it's just trying to find the best connection within our groups moving forward. So as you can see here, we'll build the ball, and then we're looking for an opportunity. So just pause it there. So can we find the free player, open body, and then we're looking for triggers. So what we're trying to say here is, if the 7 drops in, can the 8 go beyond into this final third? If the midfielder tracks and stays with him, becomes the free player. Hold the width wide, and then we're looking to try break into this end area here. So now when you're looking in here, you can only have a max 3v2. And then what we would say is to the players at the back here, squeeze on, do the right things, push nice and high, keep them compact. So again, we're building, and then now we're going to start looking at the rotation. So we've got side connection. So I'll just pause it there. So one of them is, now we might ask the players, or we might be command here, or we'll show them a video before training session, or even if we've got an iPad while training's on. So the midfielder goes wide, fullback pushes nice and high, and we'd realistically want them beyond that cone, and the wide forward comes in. Real simple rotation. If the midfielder stays in, becomes a free player. If it pushes on, then we can look to go long. And these are just little options of what we can do. We flip that rotation, fullback comes in, wide forward deep, 10 goes beyond. So we're keeping that shape while giving the centre-back options to play forward And again, asking questions of what they're doing. Now, yes, we've got an advantage because, you know, we're not matched up, but this just gives the players an idea of how to connect and what they're looking for in triggers. Again, looking at the detail of the pass. If he goes wide, can we play in? Can we get him on the half turn? And then we're playing in. And this just really helps the centre-backs around decision-making on selecting the right pass, and then on the side triangle around connection work. We'll then start to maybe progress it and let the reds press any way they want, and then maybe add more reds as we go on. So again, I know we're saying this isn't part of the game plan, but it's around principles of the game. And a real simple practice that we can use as a warm-up, or we can use as a lead-in. If Reds win the ball, obviously they're looking to just go and score in a goal, and you can change personnel every 2 or 3 minutes. Anything on that side?
No, just I like to go back to guys again, like, you know, manipulating who you're playing against. Like Mikey said, then if in the first example, if the 7 drops in, we're looking at like the midfielder going beyond. Now that poses a question for whoever's marking in the midfield. Does he stay with his runner, or does he come to the free player who could get on the ball? And that's a question you're always looking to ask the opposition all over the pitch. And it's the same with the side connections as well. Like, you know, asking the questions of how they're defensively going to deal with that. And usually what will happen is there'll be a bit of confusion at first, and that might give you the opportunity to go forward and penetrate.
Yep, perfect. If there's any questions about these sessions, just leave your comments below. You know, and again, don't be scared to drop us a message. And we keep saying it all the time. There's no right or wrong. If you're not comfortable in leaving a comment, then just find us on any social media platform and drop us a message on there. So moving on to a session that we feel would benefit us for Saturday's game. Obviously, if you move back to Crystal Palace and on how they press, now there is a few tweaks in this because this is something that we've got to be adaptable, either playing against a 2 and a 1 or a 4-4-2. So if you look at the session here, this is just central areas. So we've got the keeper, we've got the 2 centre-backs. Now, you can get the 2 centre-backs to work side of 9, but because of the modern game, you can get them to drop deeper. So for us, you probably adapt this and just say that they can play in these 2 areas here. Starting position, so you've got your number 4 and your 10, and then you've got your 2 attacking midfielders, and then your 2 wide forwards are unopposed. White's objective is build, scoring the 2 goals. Now, there's a couple of conditions that we might give them to challenge them. So we'll say you've got to play through this area before you can go into there. If your team are at a point where they're really good at finding the free player and working the lines, then just let them play. Just let them play and just give them guidance around what you want it to look like. And if you really want to go after something, then what you might do is you might set up the Reds in the way that Crystal Palace are pressing. So if it was me and Si, might say to Si, look, Si, can you make sure that these 2 are pressing as a 2, trying to screen the 4, and then we'll work on building. So you're trying to really go after something that's going to help you in the game. So I'll let it play just to show you. So example, work the 9. So if you think about what we said about first pass goes into centre half, second pass comes across the pitch, and if we do it quickly, you might draw out the second one. Now, if they're working a 1 and a 1 and they're doing it really well, then we've just got to keep moving the ball and working these. They'll get frustrated, so they'll flatten out. But to give you an example there, that's what we're looking for. So if they get frustrated, it comes in and then we play it in. Now, this would be Cody that we're working with. And we might not play the drill as high as this because Cody's a centre-back, but it's still good for him to learn these traits of playing against a 2-forward press. So what we're saying now is if they're cutting out the press, how can these 2 midfielders start to link the play? So they can play into the midfielders and then play into the 4 and then break, and we can score from that central area. So it's just giving the players an idea. Now, this is something that we definitely go after, that 3v2+1, which we've talked about in the game plan. And then also you can get them to do the 1-on-1. Again, if you've got any ideas around this of why we've done it, then drop them in there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to bring the 7-11 into play, as you can see here. So if he steps on, they can drop in. And all they're doing is they're just looking for triggers. So 7-11, stay pinned. Imagine that they're pinning the left back or right back, and all they're saying is once that midfielder drops in deep, I'm just going to go slide into that space. And if you wanted to develop the session, you can maybe put some fullbacks in, and then they can work off their movement. So if the 11 drops in, the fullback goes beyond. But hopefully this sort of makes sense. It's a great little session around building against 2 forwards and a midfield 2. Again, you've got that little rotation. The 7s come in, and then the attacking midfielders slid on the opposite side. Anything on that side?
No, it's good, mate. Might use that one.
Only been using it for about 10 years, haven't we? Still doesn't work though, does it?
No, yeah, something go wrong. So there's always a performance problem somewhere, isn't there? Okay, guys. So just moving on to the Tuesday, and obviously, like similar to last week, we'd have an out of possession theme on a Tuesday, and like I mentioned before, actually looking at Crystal Palace, there was quite a lot of direct play, and there was quite a lot of counter attacking elements in their game. So what we could have done, or we might do actually, is we'd probably run one of the practices we did last week again this week, especially the direct play one, and then we just alter the systems so that we're getting comfortable, obviously winning that first ball and second ball in a 3-4-3 rather than what we were last week in a 4-3-3. But so there's high potential on one of these days to run a same practice last week, and personally I don't think there's anything wrong with that. No apologies for running the same session more than once, because sometimes I think it's good for players learning if they're hearing the same stuff over and over again. So that we would probably get into something like that. But in terms of this week, we've just got a couple of sessions around defensive organisation just to deal with what Crystal Palace might offer. This particular one is a change in the mark session. So it's, you can run this with any system. Obviously, we're flipping to a 3-4-3 this week, so it's good to get the players comfortable in dealing with lots of these scenarios in a 3-4-3. So again, left hand side of the page, obviously you've got all your physical outcomes. This was obviously a match day +3. We'd be working for 20 minutes at a medium load. Work rotation ratio would probably be ×4, so we'd probably work for a minute and rest for a minute, and within that minute obviously we'd get a bit of the tactical stuff going on. Quite a large area in terms of half a pitch, but the breaks in this would be significant, so that the players aren't working too hard. And obviously it's going to be a 7v6 in the favour of the defensive team. So what we're doing this is we just talked to the teams about the team outcomes. So in this scenario, it'll be a case of a little bit of transition element in here. I know it's defensive organisation, but there'd be a bit of transition element in here as well in terms of changing the mark, because we'd look at pressing. So the nearest man applying pressure, all the supporting players to find their mark. Then it's important that they get ready to change the mark. So they might have to affect the ball carrier if someone gets beat, and those are the scenarios we'll run through, and obviously then defend, win the ball cleanly in attack. So obviously this drill, really simple drill, and all we're looking to do is if you just pause it there for a second, Mikey. One of the central coach is just going to fire a pass into one of the central midfielders on the first line that's on the screen there. First part will be passive, so the number 8 will receive it and kind of spin around the corner past our number 8, who will kind of let him do it, and then we're into obviously a change in the mark scenario. Mike, if you just want to start it now, mate. So he's just going to fire a pass in, it's just going to spin around the corner, and then we're into a change in the mark scenario. So in this case, the number 5's jumped out, number 8's going to recover past him. In these scenarios a little bit as well, is you'll have a little bit of chaos at first, but once your players get used to them, they'll get used to one, being in different positions and obviously jumping out and pressing, but at the same time, they'll find their way back into their shape that they had previously, whether it's a couple of players in different positions. I've done this a lot with teams I've worked with, and it's just a process of keeping going with it. So you'd work the first 2 scenarios. You can play it, Mike. You could work the first 2 scenarios in the terms of the central midfielders. If the white team win it, they just fire it straight back into the coaches. This particular one, obviously, the coaches played to the wide player. He's spun past the wing back, and then obviously one of our centre halves has jumped out. Just as that's going on, obviously our 3's recovered back past him to create that back 3 again. Same on the other side. This time we've used a midfielder to change the mark. Obviously the other 2 midfielders come across. Obviously now we're just going to move into playing past the first line into the second line, so into the 2 forwards. And what you're looking at here a little bit is a communication between the back 3 of dealing with the front 2. So obviously 2 have gone tight and 1 spare. And the same again. So we're looking at like who's going to deal with that scenario. And once we've played this central one, you can play it, mate. Once we've played this central one, we're then looking at a couple of side performance problems. So in this case, the number 9's little made a little run down the channel. Number 6 has gone with him and dealt with it. And then on the other side, this time, we'll do a scenario where if the 10 goes beyond and the 2's come forward a little bit, again, the 5's just going to change, go and deal with it. 2's just going to recover into his positions. So you probably run them all through once and then you just run them again, and just make sure that the players are comfortable with these little scenarios. Now, listen, the scenarios won't be perfect and happen perfectly like this. There's always, like we've mentioned before, there's always going to be performance problems, but you're just getting your players, one, comfortable in the shape of a 3 and a 4, and just comfortable with scenarios that might come across in the game where if someone's been beat, how do we deal with it and how do we defend effectively?
Yeah, I think on that side, this is a really, really good session, and I think as coaches, I think like getting the team to play how you want to play in and out of possession and the transition is probably the easiest part. Would you say, Si?
Yeah,
I think the hardest part is dealing with the chaos. So like a lot of the stuff that goes on in the game, and listen, a game plan / framework's just there as a guideline, and it's probably about 50-60% of what the game looks like, and then the rest is like the chaos of what's happening, because you never know what's going to happen in the moment of football or soccer, and that's the beauty about the game. So for us, what does a performance problem look like within this shape? And this is why Si's gone after this. And these are what we call performance problems that probably happen more times in our career that we've seen, Si, haven't we? So we created these drills around things that we've had a real issue with all the time. And I think if you train your team in this area as well, that's when you become more accomplished. And I think when we started to win a few trophies and we won the nationals that side, I think our team was probably more focused around the what ifs. Would you say? Would you agree with me?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's I think like sometimes like obviously you'll play against teams and you don't know about 1v1 specialists or players with the ability to beat somebody 1v1. And obviously, like looking at Crystal Palace, they've got 2 or 3. So something like this would just be really relevant for the game. But as I said, like, you know, if you're helping your team around scenarios that you're going to come across in a game a lot of the time, then you know you're ticking all boxes for us.
Yeah. So I think like going back to what I was saying was just get your framework on what you're working on. Get your team playing how you want them to play, and then what are the issues that you're coming up against all the time, or what are the issues that you see in a game that you watch, and then can you train your team to deal with that? I think that's the major things, and getting your players to think correctly under pressure. You know, you'll hear us saying this all the time because that's the most vital thing for us, especially when playing at a top level.
So second session we'll be looking at on the Tuesday in terms of defensive organisation would just be a game practice. So an SSG, and it's just a man-to-man game. Again, very similar physical outcomes to the previous exercise, slightly smaller pitch. And one of the reasons we've gone after a 7v7 here is because we just felt that we'd be able to create that kind of 2-2-2 that Crystal Palace kind of get into. In central areas. And as I said, like the session, again, a little bit of change in the marking here as well, because obviously it's man-to-man. Like at some point during the game, somebody's going to get beat. And how do we deal with that scenario? But obviously, like in terms of the setup, we've got our 2 centre-halves against the 2 forwards. We've got our 2 wing-backs on the inside against their 7-11, and then we've got our 2 midfielders up against their midfielders. One of the progressions that I would suggest for this is obviously going to be the really hard scenario in terms of like proper man-to-man, as in like there's no spare players on the pitch. But what we might do to go after what we are for the game is we'd probably drop that extra centre half in there as well, just so we've got a +1, so it's really realistic to the game. But yeah, dead simple game. Obviously, ball starts with the red team, so we'll always start out of possession. And as again, all we're looking at is man-to-man. You deal with your man, but just be aware that you might have to help your teammate if somebody gets beat. And it's like, as I said, like really simple. And a couple of challenges that we might throw in later on is that, like, for example, players can only tackle their man. So, for example, here, like number 4 and number 8 and the rest of the guys can only tackle their opposite number. Obviously, again, though, then you're looking at the principles of the game, like we mentioned before, whether they can still affect the game, where they can see their man and they can get to their man, but they might be able to block a pass or intercept a pass, or they might have to change the mark and shadow someone and stop them from affecting it. So really, it's a really good little challenge that to get into like the man-to-man stuff, but also sticking to the principles of the game. And then another little challenge you might do is you can play it on Mikey. Sorry. Another little challenge you might do is like that if your man scores a goal, then you get sin bin for 1 minute. So then you're looking at your team dealing with that underload overload situation. But like I said, and once obviously you win the ball back, then you look to go back into a little bit of your shape. So in this scenario, 2 centre halves, 2 wing backs will go a little bit wider. The midfielders will drop in and you'd look to build. But yeah, just a dead simple SSG, just in terms of how to maybe work on that man to man and dealing with what Palace do in possession.
Yeah, I think you just hit on it there. It's like if it's something that you're interested in man to man, it's a really, really good drill. I think, like I said, there's like if your man scores, you sim bin for a minute. Something else that we've sort of played with is if your man scores, you must go touch the opposition goal before you're back in the game. So it's not too much of a punishment, but it's more of a bit of a longer recovery, and then how your team work with that, haven't we? We've worked with that a little bit, haven't we, recently?
Yeah.
So the team who score retain possession from their keeper, but if let's say size my man, I must then sprint to their goal, tag the goal, and then recover. And then you've got, maybe, depending how quick your recovery is, you might have 20, 30 seconds of your team trying to deal with the overload. That's when they've got the decisions around changing the mark. And this is what we're trying to say. We love man-to-man, and we get the idea behind it, but we've done both. We've done zonal, we've done man-to-man. But what we can't move away from, no matter what system you're going after or what style, is the principles of the game. Don't get caught up on your man. Get yourself in a position where you can defend the goal, but you can affect your man. You've took the spotlight here, Si. 3 sessions.
I know, mate. Yeah, obviously. Well, listen, I watched the game and I thought, like, defensively, this is a little bit different. So I thought we better go heavy on the defensive stuff this week. But
do you want me to step aside next week? Like, do you want to take the whole presentation? It's fine if you want, mate.
I'll have a look at your performance from this week, mate. If we win the game, I might let you back in. But if we don't, then I might have to take over. But
I'm thinking about having a glass of red while you're doing this. I might have a glass of Melbeck, actually.
Classic. But yeah, listen, guys. Like, obviously, we're skipping to Thursday here. Wednesday will be our 11v11 day, so we'll be looking at putting a lot of those things that we've been working on Monday and Tuesday into practice in the 11v11 game and really refining what we're going after against Palace tactically. What we did want to show you this week was, like, again, because and we've just had a joke about it then, in terms of the defensive side of things, but when a team are doing something slightly different like Palace, and they have got quite a few 1v1 specialists in the team, and obviously as well they do play a bit direct, is like that, we'll focus our position specific defensive organisation around that as well. So we just wanted to show you, like, this individual circuit that we might do, and again, this might be 10 minutes on each practice. I mean, I think I've got 5 minutes here anyway. So, like, looking at the physical outcomes on the other on the left hand side of the page, 15 minutes, groups of 3, medium load again, work ratio. So they'll work for 4 minutes, rest for 1. While they're resting, obviously they'll move on to the next station. Quite small areas. Like the biggest one's going to be a 10x30. Which is the 1v1 drill on the right hand side. But yeah, again, guys, like, really simple drills, but really effective. And what you're looking at doing here is, like, really getting your detail into it. So we've got individual outcomes in terms of scanning, moving, dictating, and defending. And again, I revert back to the performance wheels that Mike has mentioned before. If you want to have a look at those, we've got individual performance wheels and team performance wheels. But it's all about the language you're using to players constantly. So the first drill we've got here is, like, on the left hand side, is just a really simple anticipation drill and intercepting. So the 10 and the 8 in this scenario are just going to, like, pop the ball between them, and what you're looking for the 2 to do, all right, is just to pick his time to step in, intercept, and then play it back to the number 10. And again, such a really, really simple drill, but then your details got to be right in there. So, for example, you'll be talking to your number two about stepping, whichever side he steps in from, is he stepping in with the right or left foot? Okay, his timing as well. So, is he defending? Do you want to pause it, Mikey? Sorry. Is he defending? Is he defending properly in terms of? Has he got his hand on the defender in front? Is he looking around him to see where the ball is? And then he's obviously selecting the right time to step in front. So like I said, real simple, but just going into like quite a bit of detail.
Just some on that side.
Yeah.
So just something that you need to be aware of. If you're working with your number two on this side of the pitch, and this might be maybe me thinking, like overthinking, is if, let's say, your right back's on the side of the pitch, get him to come on the inside shoulder when he's stepping in. And again, that's just trying to get players doing the right things and creating habits. So it's fine if you're just doing a technical drill and it's centre of the pitch because you can go left or right. But if you've got your, let's say, your right backs here, don't get him to go on the outside of the pitch, because if he is playing in a game and he goes on the outside, he's going to turn and go and score. So again, just a little bit more detail that you're going to think if you are going to do this drill, and it is, like Si said, a real simple drill but effective drill, and the detail that Si just spoke about, really think about where you're doing it on the pitch and how they do it. We just threw this in here for you to give you an example right now, so we're not too fussed whether it's left or right, but really think about stuff like that, because if you get your right back stepping on the outside, he's probably going to do it in a game and you'll get frustrated. Trust me, we've been there and done it. So it's just a little bit of advice around that one there, Si. Sorry for jumping in.
No, it's fine. Another little bit of info to think about in terms of a drill like that is the distances that you'll do it over. So that one there is obviously like about 10 to 12 yards, but you might make that 20 to 25 yards. And then with that as well, you might work on the speed of the pass or a driven pass. And then other little things like where it might be a bouncing ball into the 8, because you know it's like in a game, sometimes the ball gets fizzed into a striker or into a wide player and it's like it's bounced into the chest or into the thigh. So just a little bit of a variation on the drill itself. Part 2 is just again a really simple heading drill. So in terms of like the first one will be the number 6 going to loop a ball up in terms of like a little bit of a higher one for the number 5 to move backwards in between the mannequins, and then obviously head as far as you can. And again you're just going into your detail with your players about like jumping off one foot and meeting the ball at the highest point. And trying to get it as high and wide as possible. And then obviously the second part of that bit is, now you've worked on a looping higher ball. All right, can you work on a driven pass from the number, obviously the number 4? You can play it on, Mikey. Sorry, mate. And I said after you've done that one, obviously then you move the centre half back, driven pass this time, so the centre half's moving onto it. Same principles again, meeting the ball at the highest point and heading it high and wide. And then the last drill of the circuit is just a couple of 1v1 practices. So the first one will be defending from behind. So what you'll do is like the 2 players will start at the top of the small box. They'll move into the bigger box. And the idea is that obviously the number 3 or the left back in this scenario, all right, all he's going to do is going to get as tight as he can, and he's trying not to let the number 7 turn and run into the small box with the ball. So, and again, just go into the detail of it, of getting low. Can you get a hand on the opponent? Can you see the ball? Don't be too eager trying to nick around one side, because that'll make the decision for the attacker. And once you get them into a position where you've hold them up, can you get a little bit of contact on the ball from behind as well? So you might be able to win it in that scenario. And then once you've done the defending from behind, obviously you'll recover into the starting position again, and this time the number 3 is going to let the number 7 drop and get turned, and then he's going to go and face him up. And then it just becomes about a little bit of desire to get there, moving your feet and your body shape nice and quickly, trying to dictate the player to go wide, and then obviously defend and win the ball clearly. But in that last one, you're just trying to stop the defender getting into the small box again.
Yeah, I think just 2 things for me, Si, is one on this one here, just think about repetition for headers now. Obviously, with everything going on around the concussion, we've started to use sponge balls, haven't we? Especially for the shorter one. And then you're probably looking at maybe just doing 5 headers and done. And depending on how you want to do it, I know it makes it difficult for coaches, but unfortunately, that's just the way the game's going. And obviously, with all the data that's coming out now around all the headers in training is affecting people, just be aware of what you're doing there. But if you are going to go after the technical stuff, just use some sponge balls. We've been fine with it, haven't we, Si, with the sponge balls, because you're just working more on the timing and the technique of heading, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
On this drill here, couple of things that would probably give you good habits and get your defenders into working really hard is this line here. So really put some challenge on it. So if the attacker gets across the first line, he gets a point. If he gets across the bottom line, he gets 2 points. So now you flip that because you're working on defenders. If the defender wins the ball in this one here, he gets 2 points. If he wins the ball in there, he gets 1 point. Now, what that'll give you is it'll give you the defender wanting to press high, so he's getting there quickly. So we start to talk about like the desire to get there, which Si mentioned. If they do beat them, it also will create a habit of them not giving up and trying to win the ball back there. All right, so just a couple of little points that you can give the players, which can draw out what you want from your philosophy around the individual model. Sorry, mate, for jumping in again.
No, it's perfect, mate. Okay, guys, another hard week's work that we've put into obviously preparing our team to play against Crystal Palace. So now we get to see the outcome. For those of you guys who are watching this for the first time, or just a quick reminder for the guys who've been keeping up to date, what we decided to do was to get a result for the games that we were playing. Obviously, getting a result's important because it affects your working week following on from this game. And it also puts things in perspective, and it might kind of throw up a few things that we might need to work on or we might need to address, etc. So it was really important for us to have results. What we decided to do was we decided to put some results into a randomizer. So for example, we've got 5 home results, we've got 4 draws, and then we've got 5 away results as well. So this is how we'll be doing the results, guys, just in case you haven't seen it before. So game against Crystal Palace, tough week's work. Hopefully it's all come to head. Here we go. 1-0 win. Absolutely flying, Mikey. This manager PL journey's turned out to be quite straightforward, isn't it? No, listen, I think that's interesting, actually. The randomizers chucked up that result because when I was watching Crystal Palace game against West Brom and kind of what they do, especially in possession where it's a bit random and it's a bit off the cuff, then, I knew it'd be quite a hard task to deal with in general if it was for real. So yeah, I can imagine it being a tougher home game. And I'm not saying that our prep and our sessions or anything building up to the game were better than theirs, but like looking at our team and our squad compared to theirs, we've probably slightly got the better players. So I think that's a fair result from the randomizer. So yeah, brilliant. Okay, on to the next one. Okay, guys, just hope you enjoyed that week, and obviously that set up for the Crystal Palace game. We obviously moving forward next week now. We're looking at playing Arsenal away, which will be interesting. We've mentioned before that Arsenal are obviously a team in transition at the moment, doing lots of different things in terms of the shapes and the systems and moving between systems during games. So that'll be an interesting one to watch. And obviously, they've had a really interesting result today against West Ham. I think they were 3-0 down at one point and managed to get back to 3-3. So hopefully, just for Mikey's sake, that might be a better game for him to watch than Crystal Palace and West Brom.
Yeah, let's hope so, mate. Again,
Definitely.
I do apologise if anybody does support Crystal Palace. But let's be honest, it'd be good to hear your comments. It wasn't the best game, was it? And I know it was cagey, and I know people are wanting to stay in the Premier League, but I don't know. I think it's just not the way I like to play, so that's probably why I didn't enjoy it. But we've watched it, and we've hopefully give you a bit of feedback on what we feel. But come on, let's get on with the exciting games. Okay, guys. Thank you very much for watching. We hope you enjoyed the latest edition of the Manager Premier League Journey. As we just mentioned, we are away via Arsenal next week. So it'll be again that really interesting game to watch and to analyse and see what we can do against them. Like we've said before, guys, if you like what it's all about, the Manager and the Premier League Journey, then please leave a like rating. Like I said, if you've got any questions or comments, then it's really important that you guys get in touch and we connect. And I can either answer questions or we can discuss and have a little bit of a debate about your opinion around some of the things you've seen in this video. But it's been a pleasure again. Oh yeah, just to jump in there on what Si said. I know we haven't been posting as much as we usually do on YouTube, but there's a lot going on, and we've got some really exciting stuff coming in the next couple of months. And thank you again for supporting the channel and sticking with us. And I think just to sort of mention that Si said there, just get your comments in there and and make sure that you subscribe. Don't forget you turn your notifications on as well, because what that'll do is it'll just let you know when the next video comes up, and then you don't miss any of our content. Thank you again, and we'll see you next week.